Welcome to the Chrome Enterprise Technical Community Hour. Today we'll be talking about Google I/O 2025, and we'll give a recap of what was released at I/O related to Chrome. My name is Rich, and I'll be your host for today's presentation. Joining me today, we have Demian Renzulli, who is a partner engineer for Chrome, and he will be leading our conversation and presentation for today. Today's Chrome Technical Community Hour is brought to you by the Chrome Enterprise Recommended Program, which is Google's partner program for third-party solutions that are optimized for ChromeOS or integrated with Chrome browser. This webinar brings you the opportunity to engage with our team about new features and updates, enterprise development best practices, and our enterprise strategy. Now I'll kick it over to Demian, and he'll dive into the agenda and then the content for today.
Thank you, Rich. I'm going to present now. Here we are. Yeah, so today, as Rich mentioned, we have an update about Google I/O and all the things we have launched and released. As you know, we do this developer conference every year in May. And we are going to make a selection today of the main announcements that have to do with mostly Chrome and ChromeOS developers. So as always, to get started, whenever you see a lot of the content uploaded and you don't know where to start, the main keynote is a good place. It's not usually developer-oriented, or it's not developer-focused, but it contains a lot of updates about how we are integrating things in our products. So if you are looking for inspiration, I think this is the starting point. Just to give an example, there were, for example, implementations around Google Meet and how Google Meet is using AI to transform your voice when you speak in a language to translate to another language in real time. So these things are pretty exciting, very interesting to see. And obviously, there were updates in terms of the usage. Last year, we introduced this Gemini era. And 1 year later, we have seen a lot of usage and a lot of engagement with these technologies. So just to let you know, compared to last year, we are processing 50x the amount of tokens that we did in the previous event. We have 7 million developers using Gemini across different tools like AI Studio and Vertex AI. And the usage of Vertex AI last year has increased 40x. So this is to give you an idea of where the developer community is heading to. Obviously, AI is not, at this point, a new thing, but it's interesting to see how this usage in 1 year has spiked. Today, we're going to see some of these things, but with a focus on Chrome and web technologies mostly, which is the core area that we care about. So once you see the main keynote, the next one usually is the developer keynote. And this has to do with actual platforms that we have. So if you want to see updates around Android, web, cloud, all in the same place during 1 hour, this is a place to start. We are going to focus on some of the announcements here, but obviously they were covered in detail in the rest of the talks during the event. And we have organized the updates in 3 main pillars today. One is the Web AI, which explores the various ways to integrate AI features into your web applications. The second is developer tools and productivity, which covers new enhancements in tools like Chrome DevTools, among others. And finally, we will delve into new web platform features outside of AI, actually, because the web continues to evolve. So things like new UI primitives that we have launched. So let's start with the web AI related announcements. But before jumping directly into the new things, let's do a quick recap of AI architectures for the web. So traditionally, AI or ML features are integrated into web applications by exposing server-side endpoints, allowing the app to consume them via an API call. We are now moving more and more into hybrid architectures that leverage powerful on-device models to balance the load. And the goal is to enable certain tasks to be performed locally on the client, while others can be offloaded to the server. So client-side models are very exciting, right? So we have some benefits of moving this load to the client. The first one is obviously zero network latency. You don't need to do a round trip in the network to process something. They're obviously cost effective because everything is running on the device, so you don't need to incur into any inference cost in your servers. Then you have enhanced privacy, and there are some applications today where this is very important. So having the ability to run things in the device and not having to send that to a server is usually a very important thing and mandatory for some use cases. And finally, it's going to allow you to run all these workloads while you are offline. So you don't need to be connected to the network to actually run a request and get a response. So in the past years, Chrome has been building primitives and APIs like WebGPU and WebAssembly that allow AI to be run on the web. As a developer, though, you'll probably interact with client-side models via handy libraries like MediaPipe and Transformer.js. These libraries abstract away the complexities of retrieval and usage of client-side models, allowing you to focus on building AI features for your web apps. This method of executing client-side AI logic involves fetching a model that can be either pre-trained or you can do something customized for your needs. However, regardless of how thoroughly custom models are optimized, every single web application must retrieve its own model due to the inability to share this across origins. So this is not different from using, for example, a JavaScript library. Each origin is going to have their own cache, basically, that can be shared across origin. And that could significantly increase serving costs and can be resource intensive in terms of bandwidth and also storage, because you will have potentially multiple models being stored in your device and running simultaneously, which is not the most optimized way. So for that reason, and thanks to the feedback that we have received from you about the AI features that you care about the most, we have introduced a number of built-in AI web APIs for some common use cases. So unlike the previous approach, built-in AI APIs enable the sharing of a single model, in this case is Gemini Nano, across different origins. And this is achieved by exposing the model capabilities via web APIs that you can call in your web application, just like any other web platform feature. So our first built-in API is the free-form prompt API, which is in origin trial for Chrome extensions and is testable behind a flag for the web. As a free-form API, you can tell the prompt API to do almost anything, right? So this is like using Gemini, but integrated into your app. And to do that, first, what you need to do is to create a session with the LLM by calling language model.create, as you can see here. Then you call the prompt function of the resulting AI session object, passing it the prompt. For example, in this case, explain quantum computing like I am 5, and you're going to receive a response. This is also available in Chrome extensions, and this is very interesting because thanks to this, you can take this concept even further and maybe create a generic explain like I am 5 for anything that you are seeing in a given page. For example, an article, and you can get the article from the page, you pass it to the prompt function, and then you're going to receive a response. So this is very powerful, and it's very interesting use case for Chrome extensions. As we said, this is in origin trial right now, which means that you can use it in production by registering and obtaining a token. And that's why the API here slightly has changed. It's like Chrome AI origin trial language model create. So next, after the prompt API, which is pretty broad, There's a family of the writing assistance APIs. Concretely, it consists of the summarizer API, which is in origin trial. And then we have the writer and the rewriter API, which are both behind the flag. So imagine that a page that lets users to write blog posts, you could then use the summarizer API to suggest, for example, headlines for these posts. First, you get the text of the blog post. Next, you create a summarizer instance by calling summarizer.create, as you can see there. And then you have to provide the type. In this case, you say headline and a desired length of short. And then you can get the headline suggestion by calling the summarizer summarize function. The writer API could help the user draft that blog post to begin with. The shared context here is a list of things that got better in the world, right? So you then create a writer, passing it this shared context, and the next step called the writer's write function, telling it to write a blog post about the world changing for the better, for example, and it's going to create a blog post for you. And then you have the rewriter API, which is pretty similar, just that instead of writing something from scratch, it's going to allow you to have an existing draft rewritten. So you create the rewriter, and then you provided the same shared context as before, and then you call the API's rewrite function, asking for the tone of the rewritten version to be, for example, less formal. This is something that you can do today with multiple tools, but now you can integrate this directly into your web app. So let's see now some of the production examples of this. So in this case, the publishing company called Brightsides integrating the summarizer API into the AI-powered content management system. One of the publications here is the iconic The Standard, now has personalized news summaries. You click here, you click there, and you get summary. Let's put it again. So here you scroll down, you click on summarize article, and it's going to create a summary. You might have seen this feature also in some Google apps like Gmail. This is actually running on the client, so you don't even need to go to the server to achieve this, which is very, very powerful for a web application. Then we have the Spanish e-commerce platform Miravia. They use the summarizer API to summarize product reviews grouped by star ratings for customers to get a quick overview of opinions. So here, if you, for example, we are seeing you click on a product, right? And you click on number of stars, and it's going to group all the reviews with that number of stars, and it's going to create a summary for you. So let's see it working in action. So here it's clicking on the 5 stars, and it's generating the summary of all the reviews with 5 stars. That's something that's also running in the client, so that you don't need to go to the server for this. India's largest travel website, Make My Trip, is experimenting with the writer and rewriter API to enable customers to write quick reviews in English, also avoiding any potential toxicity. So here, what you do, you have gone through a hotel and you want to leave a review, so you mark the different stars and you say, hey, help me to draft a review for this site, and it's going to generate the review in the desired language, and it's going to be there. This actually happens to me sometimes when I want to leave a review and I need some inspiration. So based on the criteria you are leaving here, is going to give you kind of a template to do that. And finally, for the text-based APIs that we are seeing, which is like our first group of built-in AI APIs that we have launched, there is the family of the translation APIs, which are all in origin trial. Namely, there is the language detection API and the translator API. So first, the language detector API, which serves to obviously detect the language of, for example, user-generated input text, where the language is unknown. What you have to do there is to create a language detector by calling create. Next, you call the language detector's detect function, as you can see there. And this is going to return an array of language detection objects, each containing the confidence and the detected language. So in this case, you can just pick the first array entry, which contains the most likely detected language. So the language detection API pairs well with the translator API, which allows you to translate from a source language to a target language. In this case, you create a translator by calling create with the source and the target language. Then you call the translator's translate method, and you get the translation finally. Tara is one of the largest content portals in Brazil, and they have combined the Summarizer API and the Translator API into their CMS to give journalists a way to instantly summarize news stories. As a result, the generated summary is available to all readers. So as you can see, sometimes companies are, first of all, combining these APIs, which I think is the most powerful thing you can do. And then you can see that being integrated into web apps like e-commerce, which are just consumer apps, and also for productivity tools, in this case, for a journalist CMS inside the company. So we are starting to see cases in different verticals, including enterprise, including consumer. The last time we actually talked about some of these APIs, we didn't have any examples, but actually this edition of I/O, there are a lot of new ones. So that's very good and shows actually how much the community is engaging. Obviously, the interoperability journey of this API is underway, but we are moving forward with shipping the first APIs in Chrome 138. Concretely, the prompt API is shipping for Chrome extensions, and from the writing assistance API, we are shipping the Summarizer API. And finally, we are going to ship the Translator API and the Language Detector API. In Chrome 138, there are two APIs entering the origin trial, which are the writer and the rewriter API. So as you can see, these APIs are moving smoothly across the different stages. And in most cases, you can try it out in production, because if they are in origin trial, you can put it in front of your users. So I think this is a very good opportunity to test them out. But this group of APIs, which are the text-based APIs, usually receive text, basically. So you send a text, and it's going to help you to improve, or you send a prompt, and it's going to give you a response. And that's kind of the first iteration. But now we are announcing multimodal APIs, which basically means allowing these APIs to not only receive the text, but also to see things and to listen to things. So they are becoming more complete in the same way that you can use, for example, Gemini in its own, like gemini.google.com, and you can pass an image. You are going to start being able to do the same thing inside your app and integrate it into your app. So the first one is the prompt API with the image input. This obviously unlocks various AI-powered use cases. For example, you can use AI to describe images. It can also draft product descriptions from images for an e-commerce, or you can extract text for images like digitizing handwritten recipes. Gemini Nano's optical character recognition capabilities, especially for handwriting, have proven highly useful to us in our products and also to our partners. The way you use images with the prompt API is similar to the regular prompt API. First, you create a session by calling the create function, but this time you pass it an expected inputs option with an array of input objects type. Here, I pass image, in this case, to indicate that I'm going to send not only text, but an image as well. And in this example, I am passing an image element and a canvas element. So you have different ways to pass this content. And finally, you can then prompt the API about the inputs. In the running example, I asked the model what it thinks of the recreation of a reference image that the user has drawn into the canvas, for example. Nika, who is India's leading beauty and lifestyle destination, experimented with this visual search based on the prompt API with image input to let users find fitting outfits. This is very interesting. So you are uploading basically an image, it receives the image there, and it's going to give you a lot of results that kind of match with the style that you are wearing. Could be different types of clothes, different types of sizes. So it's very, very useful. This is from Chef Coach, which is streamlined. It's a recipe site actually that is using the prompt API with image input to let users digitize handwritten recipes or recipes they have photographed. For example, from cooking magazines. So the API effectively functions as a client-side optical character recognition tool, and users can then edit the recipes on the site to fix potential problems. So this is very useful because it's all running, as I say, in the client. And finally, we have The Independent, a UK-based online newspaper that integrated the prompt API with image input into their content. So in this case, it's the CMS. Basically, it helps them to generate image titles based on the image that you're uploading. So this is also another way to accelerate or improve and augment internal workflows. But obviously, we have the image input is not the only thing. You also have the chance to upload audio inputs as well with the prompt API. And it's going to unlock other set of interesting use cases. For example, if you have an online podcast recording application, you can leverage the prompt API to generate transcription suggestions that a human reviewer can then, after that, refine. This API is also available for adding textual search functionality to audience segments. And you can do a lot of things. For example, audio classification, such as categorizing an audio file archive by different music styles. So it's pretty complete. To use it is usually very similar. So we try to be consistent with the APIs, and you will see that always starts in a similar way. So in this case, you create a new session. But this time, you are going to pass a different type. In this case, you pass the type audio in the expected inputs array. Next, you get the blog, for example, from an audio file, and you can pass it to the prompt function, as you can see there. This is another company from Brazil. It's called Grupo OLX, and they are using the prompt API with audio input to transcribe audio messages, enhancing accessibility and enabling them to be read in more places and less time than the original audio. This is something that you can also leverage with Chrome extensions. For example, if you create an extension that's going to work on different chat applications, what it can do is that whenever you receive an audio message, if it can access the file, it can then read it and apply a transcription. So you can just read it. Maybe you are doing something else and you can't really listen to the messages. This can actually help you do that. You can build that with the Chrome extension and make it work across different chat applications. So the multimodal input in prompt API is available now in the Canary release channel. And here is a link for the developer preview. So feel free to check it out. This is one of the outcomes of this session, actually, that you can apply for some of these APIs that are recently being released. And as I was saying before, what we are seeing is cases where you can use some of these APIs or you can combine them. But as you start to mix several of these APIs, you are going to be able to unlock more complex use cases and obviously combine it with some server-side AI logic. So we are going to see a few examples of that. So the first one is Deloitte, that's experimenting with multiple built-in APIs. So they run an in-house engineering platform for 50,000 engineers, and they're evaluating whether the prompt API, the summarizer API, and the writer and rewriter API can help with some tasks like form filling, engineering onboarding, and also to provide feedback. We have here a video that's going to go really fast, so we are going to stop it. Here what you have is basically, let's go a little bit before. So here you have basically like a widget, and it's going to ask you to provide details about you. So in this case, you say, hey, I am a machine learning engineer, and you pick what is your team, what is your offering, are you a manager, and you say, let's get started. So you are going to provide a lot of information here. And this is going to start working. And obviously, it's going to give you a summary of the different things that you can do to learn, basically. So they have this the tool to onboard basically developers or engineers. So it's going to match the different criteria you have specified. It's going to give you that by using, for example, the prompt API. And next, something that you can do is to provide feedback as a user. And in this case, what you are adding is here's all the text for your feedback, and then you can click on rewrite with Gemini Nano. It's going to help you to polish the text as well. So this widget actually is completely run client-side. And in this case, Deloitte has reported a reduction in information retrieval time of 30% and a 50% increase in quality improvement feedback. Sometimes these small tweaks that you can do to make the life of the user easier produce great results, but they are very expensive to run in the backend. So all these APIs are going to allow you to do that client-side, unlocking all these new opportunities for you. So another example, Policy Bazaar, who is basically an Indian insurance platform, built an insurance assistance chatbot that users can talk to in their native Indic languages. And then they use the language detection API to identify the user's input language. Let's see a little bit of this if it doesn't go too fast, right? So here you can see you open a chat window and you start to write, and you write in the Hindi language in that case. So in this case, you need to recognize that language so you can apply the language detection API. And then once you have applied the language detection API, what you can do is now you know it's going to be in Hindi, but you can translate that into English and send it to your backend, because you're likely going to have a model, a large language model that's going to be able to respond, but oftentimes they don't support multiple languages. So what you are doing here is to pass this language detection from Hindi to English, send it to the backend, and then when it responds in English in the client, then you can apply the translation and get against back to Hindi. So let's see how it works. Basically, in this case, you get the response, and you can do have a chat conversation in that way, right? So here is again. So all the language manipulation part in this example is happening client side, and that's actually by using some of these newly released APIs. This is kind of a diagram to understand how this works, basically. So in this case, you have a text and insurance assistant chatbot that uses multiple steps to solve this problem, basically. So you have a hybrid architecture consisting on some client and server-side solutions. In this case, the user input goes through the built-in language detection API. And if it's an Indic language, it gets converted into English using the built-in translator API. And then the translated query is then passed to a server-side model trained on Policy Bazaar data and returns an English response to the user's question. The translator API then converts the text back to the user native language if required and sends it back, shows it in the screen, basically. So this example actually shows us that you don't need to choose between client-side and server models. You can combine or chain multiple models by catering each model to a specific task in the overall flow. Where low latency, cost, and privacy was required, a client-side solution was used. Where more complex models were trained on custom data was needed, server-side was used in this case. And at the end of this customer conversation, a transcription is forwarded to the human support staff for follow-up as well. And there is one more thing that they have done, which is very interesting. So what happens if they decide to implement a filter for inappropriate behavior? So if the user has some toxic language, how you do that? So they added one more layer, a client-side layer, to detect these kind of cases and to actually reject them. So they don't even send them to the server. In this case, you're seeing that it's writing something that contains toxic language. So they are using a custom model for that, and they prevent that from being sent to the backend. So let's go with one more thing before we wrap up this AI-based section, web AI-based section. and has to do with the hybrid implementation. It's more an architectural thing. So far, we have analyzed different ways to balance the load between the client and the server. One option is to use libraries like MediaPipe and Transformer.js to fetch a model that will usually run on top of web APIs like WebGPU and WebAssembly. And another option is to utilize the built-in AI APIs, which allow you to reuse Gemini Nano across multiple web applications and offer higher level APIs. Server-side AI typically uses larger models, making it suitable for tasks or use cases that demand greater complexity. And in general, client-side models are preferred in specific situations. For instance, if the user is offline and the available client-side model is sufficient for your needs, then you can leverage it. If not, you can then fall back to the server for processing. This is something that we have seen in some of the examples. However, there are situations where these client-side models won't be suitable or available. For example, if a device hardware doesn't support the model, you might have lower-end devices that don't support it. Or if the browser that the user is running your web application on doesn't support the necessary APIs. So in that case, you need to rely on server-side AI always, but you need to make the decision, right? So far, you have to make the decision on your own, like adding the logic to decide to go to client, when to go to client to server. But now we have released the hybrid Firebase SDK to manage these scenarios for you. So basically, you're going to ask to the SDK to solve a task, and it's going to decide transparently if the task should go or be run on the client or on the server. So this hybrid SDK is an extension of the existing Firebase Web SDK, which is a platform designed to support you throughout the app development journey. And the core idea of the hybrid SDK is that it will use these built-in APIs whenever they are available and to fall back to Gemini on the server when they are not. This hybrid SDK will also be part of Google Managed Unified AI Development Platform for building and using generative AI following industry privacy standards. So here is the code, which actually is very similar to how you would use the Firebase Web SDK to use a Gen AI model like Vertex AI. The only difference is that here you are passing one more parameter, which is the mode. And you can say prefer on device, so it's going to try to run the logic on the device whenever possible. This SDK is currently in a special developer preview version that's available for developer to test. It's not yet ready for production, but will be launching later this year. So you can check out the link in the screen to get more information about that. For all the APIs we have seen client-side, here's the site that contains all that information, which is developer.chrome.com/docs/AI. And for the server-side part, which is more related to cloud, you can go to ai.google.dev that contains a lot of the resources coming from the cloud team. Last but not least, we have done a very quick overview of everything that's available. But here is the link and the QR code for the playlist that contains the talks that were delivered around this topic by Google experts. So you can see more focused talks around these built-in AI APIs. You can see the partner cases in more detail and more partner cases. And also you can see things like the agentic web, which is something we haven't talked about, which is kind of cutting edge. So you can see Jason's talk on that as well. So highly recommend you to go and check it out. So before we wrap up, we still have two topics that we are going to cover very briefly because there's a lot of things that you can actually check on your own. The first one has to do with developer and productivity tools. Last year, we introduced Gemini in DevTools with console insights and AI assistance. So this is very useful when you are actually, for example, debugging your application or you want to have insights about your application. So Gemini is also integrated in developer tools. There is one feature there, which is called, is one tab in DevTools, which is called AI Assistance. So that's a dedicated tab to actually talk with Gemini about different things, right? But there are also other integrations in different parts of DevTools that you can leverage. So here's an example for styling. So if you're having trouble with a specific element, AI Assistance for Styling now supports end-to-end debugging for styling issues, which is something that you can see there. You can select, for example, a DOM node and start a free-flowing conversation with Gemini about the element, right? So if you get stuck, you can follow pre-filled prompts suggested by Gemini, and you can even make the changes directly in your code because DevTools allows you to integrate with your file system, actually. So anything that comes out from this conversation can actually make changes in the code directly. The network panel is also integrated with AI assistance. So here you can see, for example, questions about why is a network request taking so long and things like that we usually care about when we inspect the network tab. You can have a conversation with Gemini on that as well, because it's going to be available for Gemini to check the content of the network tab. Finally, performance. I used to work a lot on these things in the past. And for example, debugging JavaScript problems when you have a long-running task was kind of hard to debug. But now it's also integrated. So you can ask Gemini about performance issues, and it's going to help you to investigate what the problem is. In addition to all these AI features, there's a new panel for Core Web Vitals, which is our web performance specification. So you can check that out in the performance panel as well. It's highly detailed, and it's going to make your life much easier if you're having performance problems. It's specifically important in mobile devices, but also in desktop. And this is actually the Insights tab in the performance panel, just a quick preview where you can actually see all these performance problems being tied directly to the flow chart there that you have for your application. And you can go and you can apply any fixes. So these are just a few tools that actually I picked personally because I found it very interesting. But there's also a playlist about tooling that you can check out in this link. Highly recommended to go if you want to know more. Few more things talking about productivity. The first one is Gemini Canvas, which is actually a tool to let you prototype. If you go to this URL, you're going to be able to get to a Gemini UI when you can actually prompt and say, hey, help me to build a web app with this feature. And it's going to start writing the code for you and give you a prototype of your app. So if you're in that stage when you are testing these APIs, we have seen this is very useful. And if you need something more advanced, Firebase Studio is much more complete and is fully integrated with AI as well. Here is a quick preview. As you can see, it's a fully web-based IDE, so you don't need to download anything. You only need the browser to try it out. And it's built on the familiar VS Code environment. So you might be familiar with this as well, with the UI. Has very easy starting points to get you started. This is kind of the homepage. When you start there, it's going to give you this prompt text box when you can ask for things. And then you can ask to prototype an app. And what it's going to do is to create kind of a PRD or a plan for you. And if you agree with the plan, then you can click on generate the app, and it's going to create the app for you. So this is pretty amazing. So the last part is how you can actually put it in front of users if you want to test it. It's going to allow you to automatically upload it to Firebase hosting. So this is the other great end-to-end tool to help you to prototype things. Here is where you deploy it, and you can deploy to Firebase hosting with that. And if you want to have something more advanced that is not just a prompt, you can start templates, actually. So you have a workspace option when you can start templates with React, Angular, and any other framework, and it's going to get you up to speed. This is obviously also connected with GitHub, so it's going to make it really easy to push your code to GitHub once you finish. Highly recommended to try it out. Firebase Studio is actually a PWA, so you can actually install it as a PWA as well because it's web-based. And final topic for today, because we haven't forgotten about the non-AI stuff, which is actually still important. So the web continues to accelerate. We talked about bridging the native app gap in the past. But right now, as you might have noticed, a lot of these new applications are being launched in the web first. So actually, the web sometimes bringing some of these features first. I made a selection of these. There are so many new that it's hard to actually pick one. I'm going to give you the link so you can actually go and see on your own. But in this case, for example, I really like the new UI primitives, right? So it's something that usually takes a lot of JavaScript to do is something like this, which is basically doing a carousel. Now, thanks to the new CSS primitives, you can do it very quickly. So you already have a lot of the core features like scroll snap, and all you have to do is sprinkle in some of these new primitives like scroll button and scroll marker, and now you have a carousel. So that's great. And you can play around and do very advanced cases. You can do experiences like taps or cards. You can do these kind of beautiful video sliders with the parallax effects that usually takes a lot of JavaScript, but in this case, it's going to be all done in CSS. And an horizontal app switcher. And here you have something potentially more fun, like a vertical wheel of choices. That's very interesting. So all of this being done by CSS. There are a lot of new UI and design updates. Highly recommend you to check out this playlist. And finally, everything we talked about today, including this talk, is going to go to the Chrome developers channel, which is the place where all these talks are being added. This was just a quick overview, so it's not include all the new updates. Highly recommend you to go to check that out and to see if there's anything that that you like. And I think that's pretty much it on my side, Rich. So I'm going to go back to you. I don't know if you want to take over.
Yeah, sure. No, just go to the next slide. And then the next slide.
Yeah.
Yep, that wraps up today's webinar session. Please stay tuned for more information on our next session. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you
Thank
next
you.
time. Bye-bye.